People will always try to test you, push the limits, see how much of yourself you'll give away. It's an experiment in control, a test of willpower, a game of dominance masked as friendship, as love, as loyalty. They'll throw their weight around, pull strings, spin lies, all to see if they can mold you, bend you. But once you see it, once you understand that your worth was never theirs to evaluate, the game changes. You stop being a pawn in someone else's story. You become the one holding the pen. Imagine the world without compromise on who you are, without bending, without breaking. It's a terrifying thing for those who seek to manipulate, to mold others into their liking. To them, your unshakable self-worth is a mirror, reflecting back all the parts of themselves they've given away. It angers them, confuses them, because in your defiance lies a quiet strength, a force they can't control, a fire they can't put out. To refuse to negotiate who you are is the ultimate rebellion. Most will offer you tokens of approval, small pieces of acceptance, conditional love, if only you'll trade parts of yourself in return. A smile here, a nod of approval there, all chained to your compliance, your obedience. But real self-worth doesn't bargain. It doesn't beg, doesn't wait for permission to exist. It stands tall, indifferent to those who would look down on it, indifferent to the fleeting pleasures of others. Approval. When you understand this, you stop giving pieces of yourself away in exchange for scraps. People fear what they cannot control, and nothing is more terrifying to them than someone who knows their own worth. You become untouchable, outside their grasp, beyond their influence. They'll try to tear you down, throw words like daggers, hoping to find a chink in your armor. But when your worth is not based on the opinions of others, those daggers fall harmlessly. You become a fortress, an immovable force, built on the foundation of your own unshakable value. Life will test you, push you, force you into situations where the easy path is to give in, to settle, to accept less than you deserve. But the strength lies in standing firm, in knowing what you are worth, and refusing to budge. It's a lonely path, one filled with isolation, with battles only you can fight. But in that solitude, you find power, a strength that is entirely yours. It's a kind of self-sufficiency, a rare breed of resilience that no one can take from you. There are those who will try to buy you with praise, with compliments, with promises that have the substance of smoke. But self-worth laughs at flattery, remains indifferent to hollow words. It seeks no validation because it doesn't require any. Self-worth isn't a currency, it's a state of being. To walk in that knowledge is to become something unbreakable, something beyond the reach of those who would barter with your soul. You are the one who decides your worth, and that is a decision you don't make lightly. Some call it arrogance, call it selfishness. But those are just the words of those who envy your strength. They project their insecurities onto you, hoping to drag you down to their level. But those who understand their worth see through these games, through the veiled insults, the whispered judgments. You become immune to their words, for you know the source of your value isn't external. It's an intrinsic force, a core that others can't touch. To those who try to undermine it, to wear you down, self-worth is an indomitable silence, an unyielding stillness. It doesn't engage, doesn't argue, doesn't defend itself. It simply exists, a quiet testament to all that you are, and all that you refuse to compromise. It's the bedrock beneath your feet, the shield that protects you from the petty attempts of those who want to see you doubt yourself. With self-worth, you walk alone, but never lonely, for your own company becomes enough. Comparisons. They're a subtle poison, creeping in, feeding doubt where there should be none. Comparing yourself to someone further along their path is the quickest way to rob yourself of progress. Their victories, their successes, come from battles you haven't yet faced. You stand at the beginning, with potential still unshaped, but that doesn't make it any less powerful. Each chapter holds its own weight, its own struggles, its own triumphs. To compare one to another is to ignore the uniqueness of your path, to betray the journey you're meant to walk. The world is full of those who will subtly tell you you're not enough, not fast enough, not strong enough, not wise enough. They'll whisper doubts, hoping to plant seeds of inferiority. But that seed only grows if you feed it, only takes root if you allow it to. No one can diminish you without permission, without your silent acceptance. The power lies not in their words, but in your response, in your choice to rise above or to fall below. Those who belittle do so from a place of insecurity, projecting shadows onto others to hide from their own. Others' achievements mean nothing about your potential. Their progress is not your failure. Everyone has their pace, their process, and yours is no less valid because it looks different. To compare is to underestimate the battles you're still yet to fight, to devalue the strength that will emerge only when you face them head on. Comparison is a thief, a shadow that steals the light of what you're becoming. Let them race. Let them show off their trophies. Your victories are waiting, lurking just beyond the horizon, and they're only yours to claim. In a world that demands instant gratification, remember that the slow burn builds a stronger fire. Those who rush ahead may burn brightly for a moment, but it's those who build patiently, who face the grind with grit, who endure. There's a power in persistence, in knowing that your chapter 1 isn't a failure. It's the foundation. Brick by brick, word by word, you write your story. No applause, no fanfare, just a quiet strength growing, an unstoppable force building momentum. It's easy to be swept up by others' success stories, to think you should be somewhere you're not. But those chapters are earned through unseen battles, scars hidden beneath the surface. Admire if you must, but remember, your journey is uniquely yours. Your path won't look like theirs, and that's the beauty of it. Every stumble, every struggle, every silent victory adds weight to your story, shaping a resilience others can't replicate. They are only scenes in a play that no one else can act out. To feel inferior is to hand over your power on a silver platter. It's the ultimate surrender, the quiet resignation that someone else's success diminishes your worth. But it couldn't affect the path you carve out for yourself. Your journey isn't meant to compete, it's meant to create. Each step forward is a choice, a declaration that others' achievements don't define you. Only you hold that power, and to let it slip away is to betray the force you could become. Self-worth demands patience, a tolerance for the slow rise, for the early struggles that make later triumphs taste that much sweeter. It refuses to be rushed, refuses to buckle under the weight of others' accomplishments. Comparison shrinks in the face of true worth, withering in the light of self-acceptance. No one else's timeline matters, only the progress that builds your strength, the patience that tempers your resolve. The world moves fast, but you, if you choose, can move with purpose, with the power that only grows in silence. Every chapter builds on the last, a foundation that grows unshakable with each challenge faced, each doubt defeated. To rush ahead, to measure yourself against those on a different path, is to risk building on quicksand. You'll never know the strength that comes from grounding yourself, from walking your path at your pace. Strength is forged over time, with resilience that comes only through patience. Let others rush ahead. Let them take their shortcuts. You're not in a race. You're creating something that lasts. No one else's story is a measure of your potential. The only story that matters is the one you're writing, one word, one struggle at a time. Self-worth refuses to be shaken by others' achievements, standing tall in the face of their accomplishments. It holds fast, knowing that your worth is unassailable, rooted in a foundation built over time. To compare is to risk losing sight of that, to forget the path you're forging through the darkness. Your journey has its own weight, its own meaning. Your self-worth is not negotiable. No chapter, no achievement, no failure has the power to dictate it. Let others move at their pace, tell their stories. You are the author of yours, and in that lies the only power worth holding on to. Self-worth isn't a cloak to hide behind, nor a reason to turn away from the mirror. It doesn't mean blindness to your flaws, nor an escape from accountability. Recognizing worth doesn't exclude self-awareness. It demands it. Those who confuse self-worth with arrogance have already missed the mark. To know your worth is to face yourself with brutal honesty, to see the cracks, the shadows, and still know you are worth more. But more doesn't mean perfect. More is a demand to grow, a relentless call to conquer, to improve. Flaws, those reminders of your humanity, they aren't weaknesses to be ignored. They are battlegrounds. Knowing your worth means knowing where you fall short and taking action every day to rise above. Stagnation is the enemy here. To be content with a flawed self-image is to spit in the face of potential, to defy growth itself. Self-worth, in its truest form, thrives in the fires of progress, of confronting flaws and using them as fuel. Embrace them, but never settle for them. Each flaw is a dare, a challenge to overcome. Improvement is where worth gains its edge. To know you're worth something is only the beginning. The real work is in proving it, to yourself more than anyone else. Achievement isn't an afterthought. It's a necessity. Progress, however small, is a reminder that you're moving, evolving. There's no peace, no self-respect in resting on your laurels. Worth demands movement, momentum, an endless push forward. Each step forward, each goal achieved, it's a message to yourself. You're worth the effort. Anything less is a disservice to the power you hold within. Self-worth built on illusions is fragile, a glass house waiting to shatter. To believe in yourself without action, without results, is the first step toward arrogance. Arrogance, the coward's version of confidence, is hollow, without weight. Real worth is grounded, heavy, balanced between the knowledge of your strengths and the awareness of your weaknesses. It's not blind faith. It's earned respect. Self-worth rooted in progress, in discipline, becomes unbreakable. A fortress that can't be touched by words, by doubts, by anything outside yourself. Mental equilibrium. Now that's the core. A mind unshaken by praise, unbroken by criticism. True self-worth is a quiet power, an internal balance that doesn't waver with the winds of opinion. It doesn't flinch at failure or bask in success for long. It is steady, grounded in the act of becoming better each day. This balance is where true worth lives, the knowledge that you're neither above nor beneath anyone else, only in competition with the person you were yesterday. Real worth finds strength in this inner stillness. Winning. Now there's a word most misunderstand. Winning isn't just the applause, the end result. It's the journey, the fight, the struggle that builds you. Each victory, no matter how small, reinforces your value. But it's not about seeking validation from others. It's about knowing you fought, that you stood up to the challenge. Self-worth loves the taste of victory, not for the show, but for the quiet satisfaction that you dared and conquered. Winning fuels the soul, ignites the fire that keeps pushing you forward. Achievement is more than just a badge. It's the spine of self-worth. Without it, self-worth is a flimsy thing, a fantasy. You build your worth through what you do, through what you endure, through the mountains you choose to climb. Achievement is proof, a tangible reminder of what you're capable of. It's a conversation with yourself, a whisper that says, "Keep going, you're on the right path." Each accomplishment, no matter how small, becomes a pillar of self-respect, a reminder that you are always a work in progress. Flaws remind you there's work to be done, and that's where the beauty lies. To think yourself perfect is delusion. Perfection kills growth, and growth is what keeps worth alive. Worth isn't in pretending you have it all together. It's in the relentless pursuit of improvement. Real self-worth faces those flaws head-on, dismantling them piece by piece, turning each weakness into strength. There is no stagnation here, only the quiet, relentless drive to become more, to build a worth so solid, so undeniable that no one could ever question it. Progress is the pulse of worth, the heartbeat that keeps it alive. Stagnation rots it, slowly turning self-belief into self-deception. Improvement, the constant push for betterment, keeps you sharp, keeps you grounded. Real self-worth isn't in being the best. It's in being better than you were. Each step forward is an affirmation, a silent nod to the power within. Without progress, worth becomes hollow, empty. It's the journey, the struggle, that breathes life into it. Narcissism, at its core, it's nothing but a prison of fragile mirrors, a performance where each reflection is crafted to distract from an aching void within. Beneath the facade lies a fear, raw and untamed, a terror of being unnoticed, of fading into the ordinary. It's the shame that drives a desperate need to be seen, to prove something extraordinary, anything that might justify existence. But this desire is hollow, always on the edge of breaking, because the extraordinary built on fear will never hold. Imagine living each day in a state of quiet dread, haunted by the idea that you are no more significant than anyone else. The fear of being ordinary whispers in every silence, taunts in every quiet moment. The ego becomes desperate, turning to arrogance as a shield, to illusion as a bomb. But deep down, it knows. The self is aware of its own act, aware that without the applause, without the masks, there's little left but emptiness. This is not power. It's fear disguised as grandeur, a castle built on shifting sands. The narcissist is bound by a curse of their own making, a relentless need to be worshipped, revered, validated. But each attempt to satisfy this need only amplifies the emptiness. There's no satiation in admiration, no relief in being noticed, because it's never enough. The spotlight never stays, the applause fades, and with it, the illusion of worth crumbles. This cycle feeds on itself, a hunger that consumes without nourishing, a thirst that no amount of praise can quench. To demand love, to crave belonging through forced admiration, is to misunderstand the very nature of connection. Love, real love, cannot be commanded. Belonging, true belonging, cannot be bought. The narcissist's need for admiration is a mask, a performance that pushes away the very thing it seeks. In chasing admiration, they lose the capacity for real connection. Every glance, every compliment becomes a transaction, another attempt to fill a void that only grows deeper with each empty validation. This is the irony of narcissism. The more one demands significance, the less significant one becomes. Each boast, each demand for attention is another layer of insulation, separating them further from others, further from self. Narcissism isolates, but not in the powerful solitude of those who know their worth. It isolates in desperation, in weakness, in the quiet horror of being alone with the self. The mirror reflects a grandeur that doesn't exist, a strength that shatters with a whisper. The fear of being ordinary is not strength. It's the mind's surrender to shame, to insecurity. The narcissist cloaks it in grandiosity, but grandiosity is fragile. It shatters at the slightest doubt, crumbles under the weight of reality. Real worth requires no spectacle, needs no adoration. It stands firm, without applause, without audience. Narcissism, on the other hand, is an endless performance, a show put on to cover the silence within. But the silence cannot be silenced forever. It waits, it watches, it grows. Beneath the pride, beneath the constant need to prove, there lies a fear of emptiness, of insignificance. Narcissism is not an inflated sense of self. It's an avoidance of self. It's a refusal to look into the quiet, to accept the ordinariness that we all share. The narcissist is running, always running, from the idea that without validation, without superiority, they are nothing. But this running leads nowhere. It only circles back to the same empty place, the same hollow truth they refuse to face. There's a difference between genuine self-worth and the fragile ego of the narcissist. Self-worth stands in quiet power, content in its own company. It has no need for admiration, no desire for applause. It is, simply and profoundly, enough. Narcissism, however, is never enough. It craves more, demands more, and in doing so, reveals the emptiness beneath. The quest for extraordinary becomes a mask that hides an unaddressed fear of being nothing at all. The narcissist's need for significance is a betrayal of real strength. True worth is unshakable, requiring no external approval, no validation from others. But the narcissist's worth is entirely external, entirely dependent on others' perceptions. It's a house of cards, built on the shifting sands of opinion, waiting to collapse under its own weight. When that collapse comes, the truth is stark. The worth they built was never theirs to begin with. It was borrowed, fabricated, a lie they told themselves to keep the fear at bay. In the end, the only way out is through. The only way to real worth is to abandon the chase for admiration, to face the self in its rawest form. This is the hardest truth, the most brutal lesson. Narcissism can't hide forever, can't perform forever. The act must end, and when it does, all that's left is the self. To find worth there, without the applause, without the adoration, that is the ultimate strength. That is the foundation upon which real self-worth is built. The path of narcissism leads only to a mirror, an endless cycle of seeking and failing, of needing and never receiving. But self-worth doesn't require this chase. It doesn't require proving, doesn't need to be loud. True worth lies in the quiet certainty that you are enough, in the confidence that remains, even when there's no one left to watch. To understand this is to shatter the illusion, to reclaim the self, to find a worth that no applause can give. Your self-worth is not negotiable. It needs no audience, no spotlight, no fragile mirror. It stands complete, without the noise. Creativity. It's the untamed force, the only realm of control that remains purely yours. When the mind runs freely, it transcends the ordinary, bypasses boundaries, slips past limits others hold themselves to. Most people chain their thoughts, narrow their visions, but those willing to unlock their creative instincts step into a power that is unbreakable. Imagination, when left unrestricted, will carve paths to places no one else dares to reach, to ideas others have dismissed as impossible. It isn't just freedom. It's sovereignty over your mind, over a world only you command. When solitude becomes an ally, not an enemy, the mind learns to thrive in silence. There is no distraction, no noise to break the flow. It's in that solitude that the self emerges. No mirrors, no onlookers, just raw potential stretching toward the unknown. In the quiet, creativity blooms. Solitude clears the fog, sharpens vision, and in that stillness, you find clarity that others only dream of. Alone, your mind is free to explore, to create without judgment, to unearth thoughts buried beneath the surface. And in that aloneness, your worth grows, not borrowed, not conditional, but built on pure strength. Breakthroughs come to those unafraid of solitude. When the mind is free to wander and the self isn't chained to others' opinions, something extraordinary begins to happen. Solutions present themselves without struggle. Ideas burst forth without warning. This state, this creative solitude, isn't for the faint-hearted. Most will never experience it, too busy filling their minds with the noise of others. But for those willing to dive into the silence, greatness awaits. It's here that self-worth becomes more than an idea. It becomes an undeniable reality, built not on validation, but on the strength of creation itself. People often chase approval, molding their ideas to fit the world's expectations. But true creativity doesn't conform. It leads. It commands. When you let your mind run free, unbothered by convention, others begin to follow. The tune changes. Suddenly, it's no longer you adapting to them, but them adjusting to you. The world starts to shift in response to your ideas, your vision. This is influence, born from authentic self-worth, from a place of complete independence. In that freedom, you find a power that no one else can imitate. Solitude and creativity feed off each other, amplifying the self. The more you tap into your own mind, the less you need from others. Your worth becomes a force, unbreakable and independent. In this state, you don't seek, you attract. You don't ask, you command. And others sense it. They see the strength that comes from standing alone, from creating without fear. They may not understand it, but they cannot ignore it. This self-built worth is beyond their reach, forged in places they dare not go. When you let your creative mind take over, life itself transforms. No longer bound by limitations, no longer confined to small thinking, you begin to see things others are blind to. Problems become opportunities. Boundaries become starting points. It's the type of vision that others chase, but will never find because they lack the courage to look inward, to search in silence. Your mind, unbound, knows no walls, no ceilings. With each thought, each idea, it rises, reaching new heights. And in that process, your worth grows, becomes untouchable. Others will try to pull you back, try to keep you from flying too high. But when you've tasted the freedom of an unchained mind, there's no going back. Their fears, their limitations, those belong to them, not to you. You become immune to their small-mindedness, untouched by their mediocrity. Your worth isn't measured by their standards. It exists outside their influence. In this way, solitude becomes a weapon, creativity, a shield. Together they create a force that turns weakness into strength, silence into song. The mind, when free, begins to invent a life of its own. You no longer need the opinions of others to validate your worth. Your ideas, your thoughts, become enough. And as you grow into this power, something shifts. The influence reverses. No longer are you shaped by the world. Instead, the world begins to shape itself around you. Your ideas set the rhythm. Your vision draws the attention. It's no longer about fitting in. It's about creating something so unique, so undeniable, that others have no choice but to take notice. True power lies in knowing that self-worth needs no justification. When you reach this place, your mind becomes a sanctuary, a place where ideas grow unhindered, where worth is inherent, not borrowed. You stop looking for confirmation. You know what you're worth, and that knowledge is enough. The world becomes secondary, a background noise to your symphony. People, with their opinions, their doubts, they fade. All that remains is your mind, your purpose, and the unshakable belief in your own worth. In this state, creativity isn't just a skill, it's a weapon. It cuts through the ordinary, tears down walls, creates paths others cannot follow. Each breakthrough is a testament to your independence, a declaration that your worth is self-made, self-sustained. Others may marvel, may envy, but they cannot replicate what is born from the depths of solitude and imagination. This is the peak, the place where you stand, unassailable, untouched by the opinions of others, guided only by your own vision. Your self-worth is not negotiable. It is built in solitude, strengthened by creativity, and stands alone, always.